we have a generation of young people right now that are the latest iteration in a concerted effort to disconnect them from their own nation, from the land. But it goes even deeper than this. This is why I started the way I started. This is a fundamental battle for our humanness and for our planet. And we can't separate those. It's playing out on those two different theaters. Some people are trying to separate, what's happening with, climate change from what's happening in our everyday lives or what's happening with our divinity. You can't separate those things. Our indigenous ancestors, part of my heritage is Cherokee, southeastern Cherokee, and on my father's side. And it was denied in our family for a long time. Part of my heritage is Hebrew on my mother's side. And that was denied for a long time because lives were lost in the mid 20th century because of that. So this is my blood. I am a combination of Hebrew and Cherokee, not the religions, not the belief systems, but the DNA, but the blood. Both of those traditions are rooted in Holocaust. Both of them are rooted in oppression. And I think it's probably one of the reasons I feel so passionate about honoring our past and recognizing where we come from so that we can do just that, to honor those principles, to honor the principles of living close to the land, of honoring the resources, of honoring our relationship to food. There's a whole conversation that we can have on that. All of those things that are being happened, we're being taught to distance ourselves from food. What we find in the grocery store in many instances has very, very little connection with what grew out of the ground. And some people know that, and other people have accepted that and embraced that. So we have a whole generation of young people, John, where it's going to take a generation to re-educate those young people. And although many young people will say there's a rift and that we are dinosaurs and that we need to get on with the evolution of the world, they need us because they are about to lose the world and the very freedoms that make it possible for them to do all the things they know how to do, all the things they love, all the music, all the dance, all the freedom, and all the expression they take for granted is only possible because of the freedoms they're about to give away. And they are part of the giving away. Not every young person, but a lot of young people have been conditioned, manipulated, indoctrinated. In the old days, they called it brainwashing, into a way of thinking that says America is bad, that the human body is bad, that carbon is evil. We are made of carbon. We are carbon-based life. There was
Some are more silicon than carbon these
well, I
days.
think it's probably true. But no, just to give you an example of where how this goes. I'm coming to you from a little studio outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico. We live in a rural area. Right before COVID, there was a climate rally held in the main plaza in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and they brought in speakers who said a lot of things that were not true and incited the young people to not only fear carbon, but to hate anything that was made of carbon or that used carbon, and empowered them to then go into the community after the talk to vandalize and destroy anything that was carbon based. So automobiles, businesses, things like that. And it's an example of where that language can incite the violence that destroys a community. But those young people, and I talked to some of them because my vehicle was one that was vandalized. And I talked to some of them, and they so in their heart believed that they had just done a service to the planet. So, one of our challenges is to steward a younger generation who has been misled and indoctrinated under our watch. We allowed the school systems to become what they have become. We allowed the legislators to become what they have become. To steward those young people, as difficult as it may be, through the eye of this needle in this very, very challenging time in our history so that they don't lose the freedoms that they cherish. They don't even understand that those freedoms exist. That is one of the really insidious parts of the fifth generation warfare. The way this happens, and some of our viewers I know are familiar. There was a book called Rules for Radicals. Saul Alinsky
Yeah.
wrote that book, and it is a playbook for how you take down society for social change. We could do a whole conversation on that book, but there
And
is
the way that it's written is the problem. Is the way that it's written. It's so uh, perfectly done because it will enforce some of the good stuff and it will really put out why this is good
yep,
and necessary, and it will connect it to the most evil and horrible ways to do it and to be that radical. It's like
yep.
it's one of the most psychologically impactful things I've ever seen written, I think.
It is, and so one of those, just one of the, I believe there are 13 steps, and just one of those steps says that when you want to change something, you identify it, what that is, you freeze it, uh, you focus on it, and you polarize it. And that is exactly, if you look at everything I just mentioned, the discrepancy between the rich and the poor, you identify that. All the media was focused on that, and all of the commentary, and it was polarized. And this is the kind of men against women, blacks against whites, Christians against Muslims. I mean, it goes on and on. It's very effective. And it has happened, and our young people are casualties. Now, when I say young people, I don't mean everyone. There's some really sharp young people who are onto this game, and they recognize what's happening, and they're onto it. I was at an event not long ago, and I had three generations of people that came to the event. There was a grandmother, she was my age, who brought her daughter, who brought her eldest son, who was in high school, and they came up to me during the break, and we were talking. And what her son said to me, I think, was so telling, John. He said, "Mr. Braden," and I said, "Please, just Greg." He said, "When I'm in this room with these people, everything you're saying makes perfect sense." He said, "When I go to school, nobody thinks this way. None of my friends think this way." And